Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, our guest today is Nicolas David Ngan. Nicolas David Ngan is the co-founder for the Center for Conscious Ascension and the author of Your Soul Contract Decoded. You can find out more about Nicolas David Ngan and his wonderful work at his website, centerforconsciousascension.net. Welcome, David Ngan.
Okay, thanks for having me on the show, Catherine. Really looking forward to it.
Now, Nicolas David Ngan, you and I have a lot of similarities in that your book, Your Soul Contract Decoded, is a lot of same information and a lot of similar outlook to my 10th book, Reading the Soul. And when I do my medical intuitive readings, I read the physical body, the energy body, the emotional body, the mental body, and then the spiritual body. And when I do healing work, I can do healing work on any of those 5 levels, what I refer to as the 5 levels of healing. In your professional opinion, why do we need healing?
It's because the soul, at its core, or we at our core, are a spark of the divine, the spark of source, all that is Great Spirit. And Great Spirit, when it created this universe, it separated parts of itself from itself because it wanted to have a direct, emotional, strong experience of being completely separate from itself. We call that a game of separation, which is what we're in here on Earth in the 3rd dimension. Source is at the 12th dimension. And it wanted to go from that negative, dark emotional space along many different themes to return back to a positive emotional experience, back to itself. And that's why we carry all this emotional separation, all the energy bodies you just mentioned. And they're only there so that we have the opportunity to work through them and not succumb and suffer under them, which is what a lot of people do, because a lot of people will naturally avoid it. It's natural. We don't want to feel pain, or we judge it. Or as we become more conscious, we realize, I found the way forward to get back home to source. I need to actually engage and feel the pain, because the secret of life, big secret of life, is if we engage with it, it transforms into our positive gifts of service and we feel better. And once we work that big secret out, life completely changes. And we get a little further back to source, up the dimensional levels. That's why we have all this stuff, because we had to feel separate from God. We had to feel one of the 3 core ego programs. We had to feel abandoned by God, unworthy of being loved by God, and we had to lack trust in God. So we would feel separate. So therefore we would seek that special thing in us, that feeling that something's not right about this place, and I need to find the right place to be, which is back home at source. That's what drives us forward in life.
So will you go over for our audience again what you view as the 3 soul wounds with regard to our relationship with God?
When we're born, when we pop out of our mothers, it's like I've gone from this dark, warm void where I felt completely connected to God. And suddenly it's bright lights, noisy, cold. Oh, God abandoned me. Then we feel, I must be unworthy of God's love. This is all pre-verbal. This is how this pre-verbal stuff gets in place. And then God's abandoned me and doesn't love me, so I can't trust God anymore. That's how it starts. And all human egos, all our emotional experience is some unique combination, well, 8 billion different combinations of it for all the people on Earth, of those 3 programs, just from being born.
Right. And they are separate: abandonment, feeling unworthy of being loved, and not trusting God.
Not trusting in God, yeah.
Right. Now, you in your work Nicolas David Ngan talk about the ego onion. What exactly is the ego onion?
Well, the soul, what it does is it has to create a veil of unconsciousness when we come here in the form of our personality, so that we forget that we are God. Because if we arrived here and felt connected to God, we'd be like little Buddhas sitting in the delivery room thinking, well, I'm God, so I don't have to do anything. Okay, we're just going to chill out. All right, so what the soul does is it designs a set of frequencies based upon the Hebrew alphabet, which is the soul contract work in the book you just talked about, that I published, which are programmed into our DNA, into our energy fields, and into a substance called karmic matrix, which is like a grey cobweb substance that's fourth, fifth, and sixth dimensional that weaves through our energy bodies. And it radiates out to the matrix around us. And the reality, the matrix, creates our unique subjective experience. And so we have effectively around us this ego onion of many layers of karmic programming, which the reality rearranges around. So we each have unique experiences depending on the sound of our name. And those are the things which you work with, as you said earlier. So there's a unique program, a set of programs, and we work through the ego onion in layers as we awaken, as we become more conscious. And that visceral, heavy-duty emotional experience is the whole point of life. So the soul has that experience, it learns and grows. So God grows because we are part of God. We just forgot.
No, I just really enjoy talking with other healers and light workers from around the world because we all bring our own unique education and experience to our audience here at the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. And you're talking about your book, Your Soul Contract Decoded. In my book, Reading the Soul, I agree with you. We are a soul having a human experience. And I also talk about karma and how your karma shows up with you. It shows up in your life, right? And when I do what I refer to as soul readings, I read, what's the karma that you're here to clear in this lifetime that you haven't done yet. And I use a lot of analogies, kind of like when you go to the grocery store, I need milk, sugar, butter, eggs, dog food, cat food. And this is like your to-do list. And so we have karmas that we're here to clear here in this lifetime. And that's part of our soul work. What is your view about our karma here on earth and how clearing our karma helps us to heal?
Karma is just a set of unresolved past life experiences the soul has had with different personalities, because we're each brand new each lifetime. So our soul with another personality, nothing to do with us, the personality speaking now, has not resolved in the previous life. For example, it could be the misuse of power. And our soul got, 70% through the program over 10 lifetimes, however long it decided to work on proper use of power. So it has the temptation to misuse power in those lives. So it then says, on the astral plane, trying to decide, how will I design this next life? Okay, I'm not done with this one, so let's program some more into the karmic pattern in this current life. And so when that comes up, it activates in the personality at the right time. The idea is to get our attention because it's creating emotional pain. And all the soul wants us to do is to feel that pain, to bring our feeling consciousness into that pain. And the ego is pain averse, so it's going to resist us. It's going to defend it. Put defense mechanisms up, which is what keeps us healers in business. And so it takes a while to break through until someone has to be willing and ready. As we break through and bring feeling consciousness and feel it, we realize it's not as bad as we perceived it was. And then as we transform it into the positive energy of empowerment in this case, we've got a little bit closer to being more empowered. So the soul has learned. And then we notice, oh, the pain's gone. Not as bad as I thought. I'm still here. I feel better. What was all the noise and fuss about? And then another layer comes up, I don't know, a couple of weeks later or months later.
Right. And yeah, you and I agree that because we are a soul having a human experience, that when we clear our karma, that's when deep levels of healing occur. And from my perspective as a medical intuitive healer, your soul controls your mind controls your emotions control your energy system, and your energy system controls your physical body. So my view after 28 years in natural healing is that working at the soul level is the most profound level to do healing work with. And I clear karma in my work. And I also love that you talk about willingness, because I have a very deep healing that I do with people to be willing to get well. And in some of my books, The Difference Between Pain and Suffering and What is Healing, I talk about how there's 25 different payoffs for staying sick and unwell. So in your perspective, Nicolas David Ngan, as the co-founder of the Center for Conscious Ascension, how do these ego payoffs for staying stuck show up for us in our lives?
Well, they turn up in all forms of addiction. And there are about 36 forms, so you can add about 11 more to your list there.
Yeah.
You know, we watch TV, we ingest chemicals of all sorts, our compulsive behaviors, anything to distract us from actually turning into the pain of bringing consciousness to the program. We numb out in all sorts of different ways. So there's lots of them where people are controlling. They can be try to be special or take care of everyone else. And there's plenty of chemical addictions out there as well. Too much TV, too much film. Name your addiction that's out there.
Absolutely. And we can even be addicted to being anxious and depressed. We can be addicted to going to doctors.
Yep.
You know, you can be addicted to pain itself.
Yeah.
Now, your logo for the Center for Conscious Ascension is a beautiful lotus. How do you grow lotuses out of the mud of life?
Okay, so we sort of have a Judeo-Christian overlay in Western culture of good and evil consciousness. Evil, bad. Light is good. Good is the best. Good is light. Good is God, whatever. But this is more a Buddhist model where we look at everything as one. And the mud is the unconscious emotional separation we all carry, a point of darkness, so we can feel separate from God. We have this sense of being abandoned, unworthy, and lacking trust, which we must have to trigger us to seek the journey back to God. So what we're doing is that we're diving into the mud, bringing consciousness to it, transmuting it. It's in our chemical process. And out of that, beautiful things like our gifts, like lotuses, that's the metaphor, will grow. Okay, so the smelly mud will produce beautifully smelling lotus flowers. So,
right. Now, what are a human being's primary emotional separation programs?
well, the other three I mentioned: abandonment, unworthiness, and lack of trust, in some unique combination. Some people, it's extreme, they may only have one, majority of, but they're the main programs, because it has to be painful enough that it's the core ego structure of our life. So it's a distortion which will challenge us, torture us in some cases, some people may say, to get our attention, which is all it's there for. And if we work on it, then we get the good stuff in life. But a lot of people don't have the tools or the awareness or the consciousness. So getting conscious of what's really going on, being truthful, is the key to transforming it.
I agree with you that I feel that every human being needs a healing on overcoming the perception that you're not good enough.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that I try and explain it is that you're here to be you. And if you think about it, like Nicolas David Ngan and myself, we're going to use the word nice, but we'll just say friendly people with good intentions. But we have a very different energy imprint. And your energy is as unique as your thumbprint. So you're a unique frequency, if it will. So already a VIP. You're already a vibrational interference pattern. You're already a VIP. And once you're here, once you realize that you're here to be you and not anybody else, I'm here to be Catherine, Nicholas is here to be Nicholas, then all you really have to do is to be the best you that you can be. What are your thoughts on that, Nicholas?
Well, life is an opportunity to overcome all the mud and transform it, and to rise as a lotus, and to flower and express the beauty of your gifts in the world, which is the best that you can be. And it's entirely up to us as individuals to take back our power, take back our initiative. If we're feeling like a victim, I did most of my life, to coming into empowerment and sovereignty. And as we break free and dissolve our ego onion, the power of the soul starts to embody and starts to express through a dissolved, weakened, more transparent ego construct. Eventually, the idea is for the ego to completely surrender. And then the higher self can bring through and manifest its true mission, its true gift. So the idea is to embody the higher self and clear all the challenges we face, because that's when life gets really interesting. That's when it gets very fulfilling, because we're following in the moment the flow of the higher self and the soul, which is opening our heart to the next right thing to do. It's called following the spiritual signature. And if we do that, life changes completely, because we're in the flow of spirit. We're not at the mercy of our very powerful Western left brains in our case. We've gone more into the right brain, we've surrendered, and we're just breathing, feeling, what next? What should I eat now? What should I do now? What training should I run? Should I take it easy today? And if we follow that, life's very graceful, and you can be in the same space as someone who is not doing that, is following the path of suffering of the ego and having an excruciating time. It's all about how we transform ourselves and claim sovereignty, express divinity.
Now, let's talk about how people can overcome the illusion of abandonment. And, you know, in my view, one of my favorite natural healing remedies to recommend for people is tall yellow top, which is an Australian flower essence that helps people overcome loneliness. And especially, you know, during the time of coronavirus, when everybody's in lockdown, I think that loneliness is a big feeling that comes up that triggers people's feelings of abandonment. But one of the ways that I help people overcome that is to really see, sense, and feel our connection. So, connection to the people around us by identifying your tribe, the people who nurture you, the people you nurture, and our connection to the planet itself and to all of humanity. Nicolas David Ngan, author of Your Soul Contract Decoded, how do you feel that we can overcome the illusion of abandonment?
Well, our parents, and the way we separate from them at birth, the way we react to our mother and father, they are archetypes for how our ego wishes to separate from Mother, Father, God. So our relationship with our parents is how we feel separate from them. So we need to connect to what is the core program the ego has put in place to separate from God. It could be just straight abandonment by God. Or it could be something more complex, like God banished me, God or the goddess punished me, or the goddess abused me, or the Father God's ignoring me. There's about 70 odd of them, different ones you can have. So we need to move from the core abandonment at the top level to the deeper level of what did the ego actually program into us. Because when we get to that, it unplugs the whole thing, and suddenly we realize that was just a program. I feel a lot better. I feel a lot more connected to God. And then we start to realize the thing's just playing games with me. And then we start to realize that a lot of our perceptions are just programs running in our ego. And none of it ultimately is real. But we have to believe it's real initially, because if we didn't, we wouldn't engage with it.
Now let's talk about how we overcome the soul illusion of not being able to trust. And I really love what Albert Einstein said, because Albert Einstein kind of recognized as a wise individual said the most important question is whether or not you consider the universe to be a friendly place. Because when we consider the universe to be a friendly place, then we can trust the process of our lives. We can trust that everything that happens is working out for our highest good, even if in the short term we don't quite understand it yet. Nicolas David Ngan, how do you feel that we can overcome the illusion of not being able to trust?
In the soul contract work, there's a number called a 4, which represents trusting in the flow of God's abundance. And there's a couple of different parts of that program. The first one is being worthy to receive the love of God or abundance of God. Because if we don't feel worthy, okay, nothing can come to us because the universe rearranges around that. So you're not feeling worthy, so nothing's going to come. And the other thing that happens with that program is that we are given opportunities to take risks in life to progress, but we have to have total faith that God, Great Spirit, will be there for us. And there's no evidence of God being there until you take the risk. Then the hand of God, hand of Great Spirit is there and it holds you and the risk pays off. And it's usually things which is going to really stretch us, often with money. Okay, so we take a risk because it feels right in our heart, and then suddenly the trust is there. We trust, and then we're held, and we realize, that worked. My trust is increased, and then what happens after that is a bigger leap of faith comes. And you realize, I recognize this, but this is even bigger. This is twice as big as the last one. So another action has to be taken to trust. And so our soul will manifest these things so we can learn to trust in the flow. Then after a while, I can feel something's going to turn up. When it comes, you go, there it is. So because I trusted, because I built my trust. And we welcome it because we feel worthy to receive it.
Yeah, and I really appreciate, Nicolas David Ngan, that you're talking about taking action, because it's when we take action in our lives, not just think about it or meditate about it, that we can really integrate what our soul is knowing and experiencing. So, Nicolas David Ngan, co-founder of the Center for Conscious Ascension, what do you feel are the requirements for real healing?
There needs to be first a willingness to do it, a real willingness, because if you've had enough pain gets enough for most people, they'll go and do something about it. And often it's not until they've had enough pain will they do something about it. It's not because I want to look good and show that I'm doing something. A lot of people are professional patients, that's what I call them, where you must have come across them, where they go through all the motions, but nothing actually happens. And they've been to every healer in town, and the same thing happens because the ego is trying to pretend it's doing something, but actually it really doesn't want to go there. So you've got to be willing to go into the pain, and you've got to be willing to look at some pretty heavy stuff. And that requires a healer who can really hold a safe, empowering, loving space so they can drop into that. And if someone feels that, they will go there. But it has to be someone who's compatible and who's matched. That's the other part that's really needed. Okay, so it's a tool that you need, and you need the right tools which actually work for you, because there are lots of different healing modalities out there. And because everyone's unique on earth, and certain things work for certain people. So it's finding a modality that works for you, and a healer or a workshop process that works for you. And if you have a willingness, it'll start to turn up in your life. It'll manifest. Something will resonate.
Yeah, I have to say, Nicolas David Ngan, that when I have a new client and they tell me they've been to 33 professionals, I know they've got a block somewhere.
Yep.
They've got some internal resistance. And usually the first healing I will do with them is to be willing to get well. And what's interesting, just recently I was working with an individual, professional psychotherapist, who had suffered from, let's just say, use a general term, some lifelong addictions. And so this is a professional person. And the first thing that I did with this person was to do a healing, to be willing to be the best that she could be. And she was shocked at, this is somebody who's done decades of work on herself. she was shocked at how much emotion came up. And I said, you're facing your own resistance. So in my view, as a medical intuitive healer, I feel there's really only 4 problems ever: blocks, congestion, resistance, or interference. So I'll take them one by one. So we all think interference. So like if you're driving down the road and then there's a tree across the road and you can't go that way, that's interference. It's very I find interference is not usually the problem why we're not getting well. Resistance is what you've been talking about, your ego programs that keep you stuck in the way that you are, your beliefs about not being able to trust the universe, not feeling worthy of being healing, feeling abandoned. So interference, resistance, blocks. So a block could be a belief that you have or something physical. So block, and then finally congestion. So congestion shows up in the body, for example, as high cholesterol, clogging your arteries, or congestion could be clutter in your home. So blocks, congestion, resistance, interference, I feel are the 4 main things that keep us stuck. Now, Nicolas David Ngan, when do you feel healing is not actually possible?
If someone has been resisting something so much and the emotion is congealed into a physical illness, that's not a good sign. That's saying that the ego has got such a strong grip on the person and the energy interference is messing with their mind that they're unable to do anything about it. Okay, and it's also if they can't step back and bring feeling consciousness to the program, if it's so well defended, all programs are defended by the ego because it's not going to let them go easily. They don't have the right tools to get in there. That's when you get stuck. So the key is to, like your first session, is to de-armor them in a way they can handle, to dissolve, find out, well, what are the defense mechanisms, because they're pretty unique for most people. How do we gently and unconditionally lovingly take them apart so underneath they can feel the program behind the whole issue? So that's the first way in, and also they need to have trust with whoever their facilitator healer is as well in order to get there.
Yeah, and I feel that in many deep traumas that a person has to develop some inner resources before healing is possible. So let me give an example. For someone who has experienced post-traumatic stress disorder, for example, especially as a child, their mind and soul may not be capable yet of facing the truth about what happened. And they may need to do some preliminary healing work to just feel safe in the world, to maybe develop even some good health habits of taking care of themselves before they have the inner resources to do the deeper work, to look at what happened, why it happened, what the soul meaning was for them. And I think my experience is that people have to be patient with themselves. You have to be compassionate with yourself, because in my 28 years of experience in natural healing, healing is not a linear process.
No, not at all.
Not at all. We agree on that. And one of my books, Unlimited Energy Now, I remember when I wanted to make the book cover, I went into meditation and I got that I needed to put a spiral on the book cover, because all life energy moves in a spiral. The hurricanes move in a spiral, sunflowers grow in a spiral, the galaxies move in a spiral, cells move in a spiral motion. And often I find when we're doing healing work, we've done the work, and then we feel like, oh my gosh, here we go again. I thought I fixed that already. I thought I cleared that already. but you're not exactly in the same place. You're going around the spiral of your life, releasing the layers as you're able to do so and as you develop the inner resources. So what's your experience, Nicolas David Ngan, about the process of healing? You and I both agree it's not a linear process.
I use the same spiral metaphor. We have a stupa, like a Buddhist burial mound, but we're rising up the spiral as we go around it. But at certain points of the spiral, we cross the same program.
Yes.
We think, oh my God, I thought I sorted that 18 months ago, but then I messed up. I want my money back from the healer, and that didn't work, because we're just used to instant fixes in the West. We press a button, it should all be done. But actually, programs this is the ego onion. We have a layer leaves, we go and get on with life, we integrate that, then another finer layer comes up. So we get multiple returns on our major programs because we're ready for the next layer. So it's a finer and finer layer, but eventually it will dissolve, and we will have the positive expression of that karmic pattern. We will transmute it eventually. So nothing is wasted, nothing is lost. It's just a final layer. So it's just about welcoming it.
Yeah, I love that you and I both use the metaphor of spirals when we're explaining the healing process, right? And for our audience, if you've been struggling with something, you've been spent 20 years trying to get well, for example, one of the things I say to people is, you're still here, good for you. And, just because you're not there yet, completely healed yet, doesn't mean that your healing process isn't working. You're just going through the layers of your spiral, right? And as you're patient with yourself and continue to move forward, you'll eventually get to the place where you can be radiantly healthy. And I think that this process of moving around the spiral of healing requires a lot of compassion. It requires a lot of patience for yourself, and it requires a lot of trust in your own process. So, Nicolas David Ngan, how does healing become possible? What are the resources that we need to develop in ourselves where we can just let go of the ego patterns that have held us back?
Well, we need to have the willingness first, and then we need to be de-traumatized, as you were saying. I send clients to trauma specialists if they've got PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, because until they can unfreeze the shock bubbles in them from whatever traumatic, disempowering thing happened as a kid, they're not going to feel a thing. So there's nothing to work with. So they have to be reasonably emotionally mobile, that's what I call it, where they can feel their emotions. If they're traumatized, they may end up completely in their head. I had PTSD when I was younger from a very difficult, challenging childhood. So that's the journey I've been on. And to be grounded and to be present in the moment, to move from the mind into the feeling in the body, at least most of the time. And also have a focus on where they want to go in life, to discover where do you actually want to go, and not spend all your time staring in your navel, which is what I did at all the programs I had, all the little spirals going off, but focusing on where they want to go and actually taking steps in a parallel track to manifesting what their purpose was, which is what the soul contract work told me very early on, 30 years ago. But at the same time, as I was focusing on where I wanted to go, all my different programs would come up and I would deal with them as they came up. But then I will return to where I want to go. So I wasn't spending my entire time looking in my navel at all the, quote, mud, bad stuff. See, because if we do that, we focus on that, by the law of attraction, we're going to get a lot more, I don't know, 2 or 3 times more than we actually need to work with, which no one wants. So it's about focus on the mission, the gift of service. Something comes up, because the ego will say, oh, we can't have the mission of service, we can't have the gift of service. It's going to try and stop us. So we're actually flushing out all our programs. So we clean them up as we go, then we get back to our focus on where we really want to go. So it's sort of we flip-flop between the two.
So Nicolas David Ngan, I love that you talk about a mission of service, because one of the things when I'm talking with my clients about being happy, so there's really three ways to think. I, me, mine, all about me, 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 me. Okay, so that's one level of thinking. Then we can think about we. So that we could be the people in your household, your family, your company. And then there's all thinking. So where I'm thinking about the planet and how my actions, the things that I choose to do and the things that I don't choose to do, affect the whole planet, all of mankind, right? It's why I have an organic garden, right? And why I do service like running the Natural Healing Show. And it's my experience that when we think as all thinking, and we realize our connection, that this is actually one of the greatest sources of happiness available to us. So what is your view about service and how important it is for our soul and for our happiness?
Ultimately, we're all one. We source expanded itself from the 12th dimension down through the dimensions to the third dimension, the solidified, illusory solid form. And so our aim is to get back to that. So actually, being of service has been quite selfish, because when you're serving someone else, you're just serving the one, which is you. We're actually, there's 8 billion sparks of the divine from one great soul, one great spirit. And we have the illusion of separation. You and I are speaking on Zoom now, but we're actually a different variant on the same great soul. So in serving others, the universe says, you trust in the flow, you believe in the one. Okay, so therefore the universe is going to come back to you in another way. So basically it creates the flow of energy and consciousness between all of us. So that's how we collectively awaken, by serving others.
I just love you and I think so much alike. This is so fun because I always say the most selfish thing I can ever do is to be kind, generous, and thoughtful to everyone. And the reason I came to that conclusion is by understanding the law of karma. So karma is like gravity. I don't have to understand gravity for it to work. It just works. And in my mind, karma is whatever I put out into the universe is exactly precisely what comes back to me. So when I put out the frequencies of love, compassion, forgiveness, understanding, then I'm forgiven, I'm understood, I experience compassion. So how do you feel the law of karma helps us to understand our connection to all humanity, the planet, and all that is?
Well, karma is really a balancing force. It's not punishment as such, although it can feel like it. So if our soul in the previous life has been experiencing the misuse of power as a perpetrator, we'll come in this lifetime to be quite, if you want to call it, the victim or the receiver of another perpetrator, until with the same degree of intensity and quality of what we, or our soul and another personality, dished out the previous life. So we actually get it. So we play both ends. And so when we receive that and we work with it, we feel disempowered, then overcome it, the energy is balanced out. So it's purely there for learning. Because when we're not in a body, there is no karma. It's just a program in the Akashic records. Like, okay, you've still got 20 units of karma to work through on this particular issue. So load it up. Let's go. You might get through 4 or 5 this lifetime, and you come back again. You do it, keep going until it's done. That's what it's for. So it's purely learning. Nothing to do with punishment. It's nothing about being bad. No one's inherently bad. It's just about what program are we loading up in our personality to work through. That's all it's about. It's just a program, but it's a very real one, so we engage with it.
So Nicolas David Ngan, you and I both agree that each of us, and you listening, you are a soul, but you also have an ego, and your ego is not going to go anywhere. It's part of you. It's kind of your personality expression would be a good way of another way of expressing your ego. But as we progress on the spiritual path and on this path of deep natural healing, why do you feel the ego needs to surrender?
It's because the idea eventually is for it to dissolve. Once we have learnt that the soul has had the intense emotional, visceral experience of all the programs in the ego that the soul contract puts in place, once we've learnt enough of that, it surrenders. And then we make a transition. It's what I call a point of soul integration, where enough of the ego is surrendered, so it's no longer driving the life and creating the path of suffering, as the Buddha says, to where you're moving to what I call the path of bliss, where the soul energy and the higher self is driving the life. And when that starts to happen, life is more fulfilling and aligned. Magic happens, things turn up, and it's a completely different life than you would have had, but you have to have worked for it. You have to have been through all the formative experiences, because we as personalities are brand new each lifetime. We're unformed. And as we go through the challenges of our karmic patterns and turn them into gifts, we become formed, we become ready to deliver our gift of service. And then the flow of our spirit will guide us. And how do we deliver that to the world?
I just love that beautiful, beautiful explanation. And I might add, this is the way that I see it. So you can either live your life by ego. And when you live your life by ego, you're going to experience participating in what I refer to as the cult of difficult. The largest cult in the world is difficult. It's hard to be healthy, it's hard to make money, it's hard to be happy, it's hard to find a good relationship, etc., etc., etc. So if you're finding yourself participating in the cult of ego difficult, you're letting your ego self rule that aspect of your life. But when we learn how to listen to our intuition, which I talk about to a great degree, being a medical intuitive healer, what's happening is you're literally receiving your soul guidance. So when you allow your soul to direct your life, your soul may give you different information, probably different information than your ego may share with you. And as you learn to trust the flow of your own intuition and your own soul guidance, then I agree, life becomes miraculous and you experience synchronicities and you do experience a lot of bliss. So, Nicolas David Ngan, how do you feel we can get into the true flow of life?
Well, the very thing we just described, it's about consciously working with each layer of the ego onion that is in our face as soon as we can. Even I still try and ignore some things. Oh, I don't want to look at that. But then I realize, yeah, I got to look at that because I've had enough. Let's just clean that out and get on with things. And it's what I call getting to consciousness on an issue, because the ego tries to hide all our programs from us so we don't change them, because it's trying to keep us asleep. It's trying to keep us away from God. So the cycle gets fast and we realize, that's a program. So let's go and clear that. We clear it with, I use a thing called divine healing, and which is based on Ask and You Shall Receive. It was developed by Amira Ariel Haller, who was the co-founder of the Center for Conscious Ascension. And it uses the higher self to peel the ego onion in the right order. Okay, and as we peel the ego in the right order, we get back to the spark of the divine that we actually are. And we move forward and flow with the spiritual signature, which is the whole point. And then we can really deliver our gift of service. And the more powerful that is, the less drag weight we have, because it overcomes whatever's left of the ego onion. We break free, we reach escape velocity.
Nicolas David Ngan, author of the Amazon #1 bestseller, Your Soul Contract Decoded, and co-founder for Center for Conscious Ascension. Any final thoughts for our audience?
Given what's going on in the world, a lot of separation is coming up, a lot of darkness is coming up. So this is an opportunity, collectively and individually, this is an opportunity to dive into the mud of that darkness and transform it, because then great gifts will come to us. So that's the key, and to unconditionally love it and accept it. That's how we move forward individually and as a civilization.
Beautiful message. You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. And you can find out more about me and my work as a medical intuitive healer at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show. And remember, when you realize that you're worthy of love, that you are already good enough, and that you're connected to divine wisdom, natural healing occurs. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.